Welcome to the Empowered Podcast, episode 19. Welcome to the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells, and this is the very first podcast of February 2014. And this is the podcast that is designed to help us both grow, help us develop, and overcome the challenges that we are all facing in our lives. In this episode, I really want to kick off the month of February by having more of a focus on you, the listener. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what's going well. I want to hear what's not going so well. And I'd really like to be able to share some listener feedback on the air. There's a really easy way for us to do that. If you go to empoweredpodcast.com, there is a link there to where you can leave me a voicemail. And I want to hear from you. Before we get into today's episode, I want to say thank you to Shaysky. At least that's how I might say that, on iTunes, who left a 5-star review. I won't read the whole thing, but she says, "Awesome new show. You should listen to this podcast." Shay, thank you for leaving that review. Shay and I met at New Media Expo, just one of the, probably 100 or so or more people that I had the pleasure of meeting face to face. And Shay, thank you again for leaving the review. I definitely appreciate it. If you would like to leave a review for the show, 5 stars or otherwise, and give me some feedback, a couple things. It would really help me out, know what I'm doing well, what I could do better, but it also helps raise the visibility of the show. iTunes looks at how many subscribers podcasts get. It also looks at how many ratings and reviews that they get to know what to show on the front page. If you found any benefit at all to listening to this show or the guests that I've had the pleasure of sharing with you, would you go to empoweredpodcast.com/iTunes? Yes, that's a new link. I just got the new website set up. It still routes you to the same place, but it may be a little bit easier to remember. So empoweredpodcast.com/iTunes. And of course, there's empoweredpodcast.com/Stitcher. And you can leave me a review or a comment at either one of those links, and I would greatly appreciate it. If you are at all interested in getting some personal development coaching to help you focus, help you streamline your life, get rid of some of the excessive things that you're doing that are maybe holding you back or preventing you from really being the success that you want to be, go to empoweredpodcast.com/coach. And that will take you to a link. Just answer a couple questions, and you and I will get on the phone or on Skype and see if what you're looking for is something that I could help you out with. One more project that I'm working on is something that I'm really excited about, is whatsnextblogging.com. It's pretty easy, whatsnextblogging.com. If you have started a website or you have started your blog and you've got a few things going, you've got a couple pages, a couple posts, but you're not really sure what to do next, I want to help you take control of your content. You have a very specific need or a very specific question, and I have very specific tutorials to help you. And they're about the same price as a song on iTunes or the Amazon store. So head over to whatsnextblogging.com, and I'd love to be able to help you out and answer those questions and really let you and your website shine. In today's podcast, I'm talking with Tom Ewer, and Tom is doing something that many of us aspire to and something that I've only recently done. If you don't follow me on social media, which I would love for you to, I'd love for you to chat on Twitter, which I'm at Empowered Ellery, by the way, at Empowered Ellery. I'd love to chat with you there. January 17th, just 3 weeks ago or so, was my last day at my day job. I've since gone full-time as an entrepreneur. I want to build up my coaching business. I want to get What's Next blogging off the ground. I think in both of those areas, I can really help a lot of people. And I want to continue working on my blog. I'm constantly getting great feedback. Just today, actually, I was talking with a guy named Jeremy who he said he wasn't much for self-promotion. And here's my opinion on self-promotion. If you have the answer to my question, or if you have a solution to a problem that I have, you owe it to me to tell me what that solution is and help me out of my problem. And Jeremy and I were chatting back and forth, and when I put it that way, it kind of changed his mind. And I'm going to expand on this a little bit more on the blog. But sometimes self-promotion is not self-promotion. It's just telling other people that you can meet a need that they have. And that's what I want to be able to do with What's Next Blogging through my coaching and through empoweringthe80%.com. So Tom and I talk about the process of making a change from going from full-time employee to full-time entrepreneur and what that goes through. And, maybe if you guys want me to, let me know. But if you guys want me to share the process of what it's been like for me over the last few weeks of going for full-time employee at a major company to full-time entrepreneur, let me know, and I will share that happily with you and share with you what I've learned over the last few weeks. But without further delay, we'll go right into the interview with Tom Ewer. Thank you for tuning into the Empowered Podcast today. I'm here with Tom Ewer in the UK. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am great. It's kind of cloudy here in Texas. What's the weather like there?
Yeah, it's cloudy and cold, but I'm imagining it's a lot colder than it is where you are.
Probably. I think it was in the 70s today, so the weather's not bad. It's just a little bit overcast. So, well, thanks for taking the time to hang out with us today. Just so that everybody who is listening knows, Tom, a couple years ago, decided to quit his job and become a full-time writer and blogger. And that's what he does full-time. And he's able to travel between Rugby, UK, and a relative here in Texas, a condo in Colorado, and sometimes he hangs out around the Middle East, floating from hotel room to cruise ship and back. And I wanted to have Tom on the show to really walk us through the process of what it was like going from fully employed to employing himself and the challenges that he faced going through that process, and really teach us how to possibly do the same thing if that is in fact what we want to do. So Tom, tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now and maybe segue into the process of going pro and working for yourself.
Okay, well, at the moment, I'm not sure how I would describe myself. I guess there are three main things going on in my professional life at the moment. The first thing is that I produce content, web content or blog posts to be precise. I used to be a freelance blogger in that I did it all myself, but I quite recently transitioned into a subcontracting model. So I work in an editorial capacity, and I have a team of writers, and they produce content for clients, and I make sure that content is up to scratch before submitting it. So that's what I do now on that front. The other two things I have is I'm the founder of two blogs called Leaving Work Behind and Healthy Enough. Healthy Enough is quite new, but Leaving Work Behind is pretty well established. It's been around since May 2011, which was the point at which I decided to quit my job. And it's basically, it started off as an accountability journal for me. So, for instance, if you go on there, you'll see loads and loads of posts about kind of my trials and tribulations through the years. These days, it's more of a teaching site as opposed to a learning site, and it's a community. So there are forums there, and people can go and they can chat with each other, and they can get help from me.
So if we can, we'll back up a couple years. You're in your late 20s now, and 2 years ago, when you're in your mid 20s, you decided, I want to do my own thing. I'm done working for somebody else. Is that part right as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back about 2.5 years actually, to May 2011, where it was kind of an overnight thing, and it was an overnight thing in a sense that overnight I suddenly decided I wanted to quit my job, but I think it had been building up for a long time, and there was maybe just some small incident, some frustration at work, and I finally just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I've got to quit my job, and that's where I found myself.
Is that something that you can share about, or I would understand if it's private, but
Oh
was
no,
there some?
to be honest, I can't remember what it is. It was pretty inconsequential, so that's why I don't want to draw too much attention to it, because
Okay.
it was simply a case of, it just things just build up, and I didn't hate my job.
Yeah.
I enjoyed many elements of my job. I mean, for anyone, for most people, I should say, there are parts of your job that you like and parts that you don't. For some people, you hate most of it, but there are bits you like. For some people, you like a lot of it, but you really don't like some bits. And for me, it was probably a 75-25 split. So I would say I was fairly happy, but that wasn't really the point. It wasn't just for me about disliking my job or otherwise. It was more about elements such as wanting to be free, wanting to be in control of my hours, and wanting to prove to myself that I could succeed on my own. So those were the key drivers for me. Less so that I didn't like the job, but that was part of it as well.
So how did you decide what you wanted to do with two blogs, healthyenough.net and leavingworkbehind.com? How did you decide that that was the route that you wanted to go instead of opening a bookstore or something with a storefront?
Well, first things first is that I didn't want to quit my job well, my aim was to not quit my job until I was earning as much money from my business as I was from my work. So that immediately discounted any kind of real bricks and mortar business, because that would require all my time. I needed something that was on the side that I could bootstrap, that I could launch with little money. So it had to be something online. That to me wasn't really an option. I had to go with something that I could build over time, and it wouldn't take too much of my time up, and it wouldn't take too much of my money either.
And so you landed on blogging.
Yes and no. Well, let's see. It was in May, and I was looking around, and first of all, I decided to try out niche sites. So I would build I'd build a site, and I'd try and get advertising from it. And I look back at that and I laugh now, because I think that really is a short-sighted business model. And I know there are people out there who make good money from doing it, and all respect to them, but it's not for me. I want to create something that's more permanent, that's more tangible, and real, and human. So I started out with that. I tried this and that and various things, and Leaving Work Behind to begin with was nothing more than accountability journal. So it was just something that I wanted to use to hold myself accountable to what I was doing, and hopefully attract a few people so they could kind of cheer me along and kind of get some encouragement that way. It was only really that in kind of late 2012 that Leaving Work Behind came into its own as a moneymaker. Before then, it was freelance blogging, which obviously, although it is connected to blogging, not in the traditional sense of making passive income from it.
So you said you started it in 2011, late 2012, it started making money. Is that a 12, 15, 18 months or so?
It was May 2011 that I launched the blog, and I launched my first information product in November, or right at the end of October. So you're talking about about 18 months for it to make any kind of serious money. I mean, it made a little bit before that on affiliate marketing, but nothing that you get too excited about.
Now, how did you decide what information product that would be? Because I think there's a lot of people like me. I've got a couple products out there. I've sold a few copies, but it's not enough to pay all of the bills. How did you decide what that product would be, and then how did you market it to where it got in front of the right audience to where they said, "Hey, I want to buy that"?
It's funny, actually. I look back and laugh, because I tended to agonize over it. Is this the right thing to write about? And I wasn't.
I know what you mean.
I wasn't sure, and in the end, I just decided, what, screw it, I'm going to do it. And if it's not the right thing, then at least I'll have learned from the experience, and maybe I'll make a few bucks. So I had this. I produced this guide, and it was a guide to freelance blogging. And the simple reason I decided to go with that was because it was the thing that I felt I could best teach about. That was the first thing, and perhaps the most important thing, is that sure, I could write about other things, but what's the thing that I have succeeded in so far? And the answer was freelance blogging. So unless I just wanted to be another person who tries to teach people to be successful at something they haven't been successful in, and I had no intention of doing that, I had no other choice than to talk about freelance blogging. And at the time, Leaving Work Behind isn't just about freelance blogging, but it certainly talks about it quite a lot. So I felt that it was a good fit for my audience as well. And I thought, hey, I wasn't sure at all, but I thought I've got to give it a go, and we'll see where it goes.
When you decided to give it a go, what was going through your mind? Did you have a lot of doubt? Whenever I came up with my product, I thought, what if nobody likes it? What if I steer somebody wrong? What if it doesn't produce the same results that it produced for me? I had a lot of questions going on. How did you have those kinds of questions in your head? And if you did, what did you do to say, I'm going to do it anyway, or overcome those self-objections?
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly had those questions in my head. I was completely unsure as to what I was doing. The way I overcame it was actually quite simple, and this is a method I use for almost anything that I'm uncertain about. So basically, I will try and quantify it. I will try and make numbers out of uncertainty, which will give me a level of certainty. So in this case, what I did is I said, right, the guide is going to take me, let's say, 50 hours to write, and let's say I want to earn $50 an hour for doing it. So that's $2,500. So I said to myself, okay, if I can make $3,000 in the lifetime of the guide, then I'll be happy. I'm not going to come out with some outrageous notion of I want to earn 100 grand from making it. I'm just going to start there and say, if it makes 3,000, I'll be happy because I'll have earned $50 an hour, which at the time was roughly what I was making from freelance blogging. It was a lot more before I finished with it, but I said that'll do, and I think by the end of November, I'd met that target. So I was at about 2,500. So I'd pretty much got my hourly rate, and then I realized from then on in, it was all kind of extra profit, to put it one way. So what I would say is, if you have those doubts, you need to find a way to justify the level of work you put in. And always remember that when you're doing things like this, where it's not loads of money at stake, you have to remember that the worst thing that can happen is you lose time. And that's not the end of the world. And what you'll find is that although you may lose time, you'll probably gain a lot of experience in doing it. And that can be as valuable as the money you might have otherwise made.
I like that a lot. How many do you remember when you launched that product, about how many visitors your website was getting on a monthly basis?
I could look. I mean, it wouldn't have been that many. I think I had slightly less than 1,000 email subscribers, which isn't a huge amount. And I can quickly look now and tell you it wouldn't have been that much. I think I launched at the end of October, early November, and I was probably getting maybe 400-500 visits a day. No, probably not even that much, to be honest. It wasn't a huge blog at the time.
So this was almost exactly a year ago, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Because I have some fellow bloggers that I'm connected with, and one thing that I've thought myself, and one thing that I've had email conversations with them is, my audience isn't big enough, and 400 to 500 a day, to me that seems like a pretty solid amount. 1,000 subscribers, Derek Halpern talked about getting your first 1,000. So that's encouraging, that you don't have to have just this massive blog, 10,000 visitors a month before you can launch a product and you've made a couple $1,000s from it.
Well, there's a blog post that Emily Wapnick wrote, and I was just looking it up while you were talking. Unfortunately, the blog she posted on seems to have expired, but the simple kind of basis of this blog post was that she made $4,000 in the first month of her first product launch, but she only had 500 subscribers. So this notion that you can make, that you have to have a huge list to make money, is absurd. And a statistic I've just found on my blog is that I did a pre-launch to a list of just 225 people. And that pre-launch resulted in $1,800 in sales. And that's 225 people. So it's far less about numbers and far more about how engaged your audience is with you. It's far less about the quantity of your list or the quantity of the amount of people who visit you, and it's far more about how well you present yourself and how much people trust you and value what you have to say.
So that brings me to a question that I think a lot of people struggle with, but it's kind of something that you have to do in this space. You have to get the subscribers. Do you have anything that you did that got people to sign up for your mailing list? Because mine's pretty small, but it's kind of the most important thing that you can do, depending on who you ask. Is there something that you did or maybe didn't do that really encouraged people to sign up?
Well, historically, I've been terrible at getting email visitors.
Yeah, me too.
My conversion rate's always been pretty low. I've just redesigned my site, and the conversion rate has finally jumped to something respectable, or probably above respectable. But I wasn't really doing anything special. Really, the two things I did was I had an incentive for people to sign up. So I had a guide to keyword research and SEO, keyword research analysis. And then I had an autoresponder of around 15 or so emails that went out on a week-by-week basis. I also did a broadcast every week, but to be honest, I think two emails a week is too much. And that's it. That's all I did. I mean, I could talk a lot about what I think people should do to get more email subscribers, but I've not been walking the walk myself, and I've only started to walk the walk myself recently. And people overthink it too much. It's better that you get something out there, get a form on your site, even if you don't have an incentive for people to sign up. You just get something out there, because the sooner you start building an email list, the sooner you will be able to create a core audience that'll keep coming back to your blog. Until then, if someone hits your site and then doesn't come back, that doesn't mean that they were never going to come back. If you'd managed to collect their email address, they might have been quite happy to come back. It's just that people's attention is very limited, and if they only hit your site once, they'll forget about it very quickly. So I cannot understate the importance of having an email list, and I cannot understate the importance of just getting a sign-up form out there and worrying about everything else later. There aren't really any magic tricks. There are just ways to make the conversion rate higher, and we can talk about those, but the key is to get the form on the site.
Would you be able to be full-time doing what you're doing without your email list?
Definitely. I make most of my money at the moment from the writing business, which doesn't really require, there's probably some indirect benefits from having an email list. If I lost my email list, you'd see my product sales go down, you'd see my affiliate income go down on my site, and I'd have to start all over again. It would be a real it wouldn't be good, if I lost my
it would hurt, but it wouldn't put you.
Kill me. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So when you decided, hey, I'm going full time, and you went through this change, and now you have two pretty successful blogs, has this process, or after the process of the change, is it what you thought it would be, working for yourself, doing your own thing?
Yeah, in simple terms, no. That's the easiest way to say it. You can't begin to predict what it might be like, and it's different for every person. I'm quite happy to be on my own. I'm quite I like spending time with people, but I'm also very comfortable on my own as well. So I don't have a problem with being on my own. It is a problem for some people. There's a myriad of things that you'll just not see coming, and to be honest, most of them are really positive. There's the obvious ones, like you wake up in the morning and you kind of go, oh, should I start working now, or should I just lie in for a while? And people see that as the dream, but in reality, once you start to run your own business, you apply that own pressure to yourself. You'll say, no, I need to get up because I need to develop my business, but it'll be more empowering because you're making that choice, not someone else. So a lot of people talk about the freedom, and the important thing when you do quit your job is that you give yourself a relative level of freedom, not turn into this person who's working harder than they did when they were in their job, because then you've missed the entire point. But at the same time, you can't be really lazy and just stay in bed all day, because then you won't make any money. So you do need to strike that balance, and you need to be prepared to face a lot of unexpected things that didn't quite make up the vision or the dream that you had, because the reality, it's not necessarily worse than your dream, but it will be different.
Yeah, I got a PlayStation 4 on Friday. I was one of the people who pre-ordered during E3, and it showed up from Amazon Friday evening. And I'm sitting there playing Killzone. I'm a big first-person shooter fan. And all day Saturday, I would bounce between the game room and the office, editing a podcast, taking a break, and then taking a break from gaming, coming back. And I felt that pull, just like you said, whenever you're doing your own thing and editing podcasts, getting ready for production, I almost felt guilty going and wasting time playing a video game. And so I wanted to come back to it, but it's your own inner drive and inner motivation that you may not experience unless you, I guess, experience it. You've decided to do what you want to do, and it pulls you back, especially if you enjoy it.
Yeah, one of the biggest troubles one will face as someone working from home is creating that clear delineation between work and home. And when I turned my spare bedroom into a home office, that made a huge difference, because then it's all about going in there and closing the door, and that being your workspace, and then you're working. And then it's all about leaving that room, closing the door, and then being at home. And that's one of the key things that I recommend to anyone who's just quit their job, is that create, even if it's not a room, if you don't have a spare room to do it in, create a space which is your workspace and only do work there, and do not do work anywhere else. And if you do that, you'll find that you can leave work at the end of the day, or you can choose to stay and do more work. But at least you have that very clear psychological separation in your mind as to what is work and what isn't.
Now, Todd, being on the Empowered podcast, you might have guessed that you would get a question about the word empower. What does the word empower mean to you?
Freedom. If you're empowered, that means that you are free. I suppose you can look to the word inherent in that, power. But for me, freedom is the ultimate expression of power. What you want, then that's it.
Great answer, yeah. How did you empower yourself to make the changes necessary to go from full-time employed to someone else to full-time working for yourself? How did you empower yourself to make that change?
That's a really good question. I think the key there is persistence. The key to empowerment is persistence. So it's, I wasn't able to quit my job because, directly at least, because I'm particularly talented at writing. Because when I got started, I wouldn't consider myself anything other than a good writer, maybe a decent writer, not a great writer. It was all about persistence. And I may not have even come across freelance blogging if I hadn't been persistent in what I was doing. So the absolute key for me in terms of empowering myself to quit my job was to keep working hard and keep persisting until I found something that would work. And if I hadn't had that persistence, regardless of how good a writer I was, I would have never got to that stage where I saw it as a viable opportunity. That was the key.
What's a good way to empower other people?
You can't empower other people. You can help them to empower themselves, but you can't bestow it upon someone. There's a lot of people out there, and this is really tricky when you get to the kind of the concept of empowerment and all the kind of things that work around that. There's a lot of people who are looking for a tool or some kind of solution that will make them empowered. And that's not how it works, unfortunately. There's tools for a lot of things that work, but there is no tool for empowerment. There is only creating it within yourself. And you can read things and you can talk to people, and that can help you to become empowered. I'd like to think that if people go on my site, that can help them to be more confident and figure out what they can and can't do. But ultimately, the person has to be active in doing that. They have to be clear in their own mind that they are setting out to empower themselves. They're not setting out to help someone else empower them, because I suppose it's possible in a literal sense that if someone handed you power, you would have it. But in a sense of creating your own freedom, you can only do that for yourself, in my opinion.
I think that's a really great answer, even though my blog is Empowering 80% and it's about empowering other people. But I really like what you said, because I've heard, I think John it wasn't John Maxwell, I can't remember who it was, talked about what you just said, that you can't empower someone else. They have to empower themselves. And it's something that I've kind of gone back and forth about and spent a lot of time thinking about. And I think you said it really well. You can't. You can create an environment, but people have to take that power themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I could be really pedantic and say your site's called Empowering the 80%. That's not possible, but it's not you don't take it literally. I mean, I say I hope I empower people, but in reality, what I really mean is that I hope they're empowering. I hope they're taking what I have to say and using that to empower themselves.
Yeah, that's definitely a big piece of it. So I'm glad you gave that unique answer. I don't ask everyone that question, but I'm definitely glad that I asked you that question. It's a good answer. When you decided to do what you're doing now, what types of resistance did you face?
Quite a bit. There's the classic friends and family. This is always going to be the case. You're going down a non-conventional route. I had a good job. I was paid well. I had autonomy, and I was going to throw it all away. Or that's how a lot of people viewed it. So I didn't really get a lot of support from family and friends. And I don't mean that so much in a negative sense. I mean that instead of them encouraging and being like, this is great, give it a go, they were worried. And they didn't want to seem discouraging, but at the same time, they weren't exactly, jumping over themselves to encourage me. So for a lot of people, and not for everyone, because you can have very supportive friends and family potentially and partners and so on. But for a lot of people, it's quite a lonely endeavor. And I think one of the best ways to overcome that is to get involved in communities online. And that's actually why I launched one of the main reasons I launched the forums on Leaving Work Behind, is that those people who perhaps were in my position and don't have that support in their real life, as it were, they can come and find people who they can share a common cause with. So that's definitely one of the biggest challenges. And I suppose next to that, the next biggest challenge is self-doubt. I mean, that's the killer. That's the one that can, regardless of how talented you are, can stop you from succeeding. And that links back to persistence, in that I had self-doubt like anyone does. But I decided that, even if I doubt myself, I'm still going to try. And that to me was the key, because in my opinion, you can take steps to defeat self-doubt, but the biggest kind of vanquisher of self-doubt is accomplishment. If you say, I can't do X, and then you achieve X, you will no longer have any self-doubt about whether you can do that, because you've done it. And that's the biggest one. So if you can employ persistence and achieve what you think you can achieve, that self-doubt will, of course, disappear.
Awesome. Have your family and friends changed their tune now, or are they still, hey, Tom, you need to go back and get a real job?
Yeah, it's really funny you should ask that, because I was out with some friends last Saturday, and at some point my friend comes up to me and he says, I think you would have been better off if you'd stayed in your old job.
Ouch.
And I was like, what? And I was like, why do you think that? And it was a family business. It was my dad's business, and definitely had good prospects, job for life and all that kind of stuff. And he basically said words along that line. You could have benefited from his mentorship. You had a secure job for life. It could have got better. And I was kind of scratching my head and thinking, what? And I turned to him and I said, I'm earning twice as much as I used to. Next year, I'll probably earn 4 times as much. I'm so much happier. I've proven to myself that I can do it, and I'm free. Why would have I been better going back to my job? And the key there was just perspective. And the simple fact is my friend there, he has a very conventional outlook on life, and that's his prerogative, and that's fine. And his perspective on life is that you have a job and you make sure it's as secure as possible, and then you never leave it. And my perspective happens to be very different, in that even if it requires risk, you chase what you think will make you the happiest. And that's more important than money and anything material. I'd much rather live in a much smaller house and have a much smaller car and do something I love on a daily basis than earn more money to support material things that I don't need. So to answer your question, yes, most people are now very supportive of what I do. Very surprised that I've succeeded, but very supportive. Most people still have no idea what I do, no matter how many times I tell them or how I do it. And yeah, occasionally I'll still come up against people who feel that I'm still crazy for what I've done, and that's something, you know, you'll never be able to let go of as long as you keep living an unconventional lifestyle.
Now, did your friend really say you could have stuck it out and it could have gotten better?
He was basically saying that he felt it was a better long-term prospect.
Okay, okay. Because when you first said that, I was thinking, whatever we're doing in life outside of just work life, but in relationships and friendships too, do we really want to have the mentality it could stick out or stick it out and it could get better when, obviously you mentioned some of the big upsides and of to doing this, but um, I may have misheard that, but I definitely I thought that was pretty interesting. Do we really want to stick it out until it gets better, or do we want to take action today to make it better? And that's what you did.
Yeah, you take control every time without fail, but most people don't. That's the fact of life.
Yeah. So now, I mean, you've been doing this for 2.5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
What does a typical day look like for you?
I will generally. Well, here's the thing. Most days will be pretty normal. I'll get up around 8, half 8. I'll start work around 9ish. I'll work through to lunch at 1, and then I'll probably work through from 2 until 4 or 5 o'clock, and sometimes a bit later. So, in terms of everyone's normal people's working hours, that's pretty average. Probably a bit less than what most people do, but not a huge amount less, and probably not within the line of the dream that most people, the 4-hour work week model.
I was going to say you're not doing that one.
Yeah. The key, I guess, is that I have that freedom. But when I do work, I love what I'm doing, so I will quite happily sit down and do it for a day, for the day. So the key, I guess, is the flexibility and the freedom. I could just wake up one morning and say, yeah, I don't feel like doing any work today, or I could take the afternoon off to see a friend, or anything along those lines. And I suppose that's the key difference. My working day actually looks pretty similar to most people's. The difference is that I can not do that if I want to.
And it sounds like you are doing it and have the option to work from anywhere, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I just need a laptop and an internet connection, and I've not taken advantage of that as much as I probably should have done. But yeah, that is something I can do.
Just random question, where about, and you don't have to be specific, but where about in Texas was it your sister?
Yeah, she lives in Houston.
Houston, okay, so that's about 3.5 hours east. Yeah, east of here. I'm just north of Austin, so.
That's right, southeast. Yeah, I've been to Austin a few times. So,
what'd you think?
I know the drive. Oh, I love Austin. It's amazing.
Yeah, the weather's pretty good. So yeah, what are you doing today, Tom, that will keep you moving forward tomorrow?
That's a good question. Well, for me, it's 10 to 5 here, so not a lot is the answer. But in terms of what I have done today, what I do is I always make sure that my focus first thing in the morning, generally up until lunchtime, is on something that is taking me forward. So, for instance, this morning I wrote up a new post for leaving work behind, and I then did some preliminary work on 2 projects that I have coming up. One small project, one big project, and both of those projects will either make me more money or they will drive more traffic to my site. And those are really the key things. Am I doing something that will generate more income, or am I doing something that will get me more subscribers, more traffic? But over and beyond that, actually, one of the key priorities for me is to enjoy what I'm doing and make sure that I'm helping people at the same time, because it's only really fulfilling to me if I'm helping people. If I was doing something like a lot of shady internet marketers and basically just putting something out there to make a quick buck, that wouldn't satisfy me at all. So another thing that I have to make sure that I'm doing is creating something that is of value to people. And that's not so much an altruistic thing. I'm not going to try and make myself out to be a saint. It's as much as wanting to make people happy as it is getting that good feeling from helping people as well. So I don't want to make out like I'm some kind of saint on that front.
No, I don't hear it that way. There may be some people who would, but I keep using this analogy because I mentioned before I have some bloggers who don't want to release a product until they have so many visitors per month, or they don't have confidence in it. But if you had if you had the solution to my problem, Tom, and you're not telling me you have that solution, and then I later find out about it, I might be kind of mad. Tom, you could have helped me this entire time. So I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with what you just said, making money and driving more traffic, because that's more people to your site, more people that you're helping, and you're making money off of it, which allows you to recycle that and come up with another product that helps even more people. So I'm a fan of that business model.
Yeah, I mean, you should create a product. The product creation process, or when you start to do it, shouldn't be predicated upon an arbitrary number. It should be predicated upon when you think that you may be able to create something that's of value for people. That's the key. And there will be doubt. You may doubt whether you do. I know I did. But it's got nothing to do with subscriber numbers, because even if you only have 10 subscribers, if you launch your product and you make no sales, you can always relaunch 6 months later, and it makes no real difference. You can pull it down, and you can then go back with gusto and relaunch it properly to a bunch of people who never saw it before, because there was only 10 people visiting your site when it was there. So there's
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with getting something out there. But if you've only got a handful of subscribers, don't expect it to be a huge success. But at least then you've created it, and you can work on creating the necessary traffic and subscribers to start driving sales.
Yeah. Since you decided to face your fears and go full time, is there anything that you have stopped doing?
Anything that I've stopped doing? I think the one thing I've probably stopped doing is doubting myself. Everyone doubts themselves to an extent, but my self-doubt was certainly a lot higher than it used to be. And now I can approach just about any project, and it may not be a case of I know I will succeed, but it's a case of I know I am capable of succeeding. I may not, I might get it wrong and have to realign or try something else, but I know I'm capable of succeeding. So I know that if I do this, I've got a great chance of succeeding. And that's probably the key thing. I've stopped that voice of you might not be capable of doing this. That voice has stopped entirely, and it's been replaced by a more pragmatic voice, which is you're very capable. This might not work, but it probably will. So give it a go. And
That's awesome.
That makes a huge difference, an enormous difference.
Yeah, that goes back to what you said. I'm looking through my notes. At one point you said, even if I doubt myself, I'm still going to try it. But there was something else. It was where at the very beginning you say, keep working hard and keep persisting until you find something that works. And I like that answer, because even if it doesn't work, I'm going to still try. And you've built up that proven to yourself, the proven track record of success. I think, man, I like that. I like that a lot. Tom, how do you unwind and relax?
Well, I've already talked about the clear delineation between work and home, and that is vital. That removes an enormous amount of stress. So the problem with not having that clear zone is that you never really feel like you're done. So if you, for instance, have your laptop in your living room and you're watching TV and you're doing a few emails, that's no good at all. That isn't downtime. You might tell yourself that's downtime, but it's not. Downtime is when you are away from your work, when you can quite literally and figuratively close the door on it. So the first thing I'll say is how I unwind is I close the door on my work and I walk away from it. And then on a more kind of material level, I watch TV, I read, I watch and play sports. Just, I socialize with friends, just all the kind of usual stuff.
Okay. What was the last movie that you saw?
I saw Gravity last night.
What'd you think?
I thought it was incredible. I felt that the kind of backstory to Sandra Bullock was a little bit cliched, but the film itself as a cinematic experience was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think we saw it in 3D, which it wasn't just spectacular in 3D, but my wife and I were sitting there, and that was a tense movie.
Yeah, I was emotionally and physically drained when I walked out of the cinema.
Yeah, you're just exhausted. Like, oh, I need to go take a nap. I need to go relax or something. Yeah. Because we were just we weren't on the edge of our seats, but it was like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna, I don't want to ruin the movie for anybody, but it was very tense.
It was relentless. I think that's the key. It just kept going. There was no kind of let up.
That's true. That is very true too. Okay, one last question, Tom. What is one tip or piece of advice that you can give people who who just like me are looking to take that next step to go pro and to do whatever it is in life that we want to do, what is one tip or piece of advice that you can give us?
Yeah, this is a question that, in many different forms that's often asked. And although I'm just going to be repeating myself by saying this, I hope that does underline the importance. The key is persistence. I don't care how intelligent you think you are or aren't, or how capable you think you are or aren't, or how experienced. These things are all largely irrelevant next to persistence. And I'll add to that by saying, whatever you want to achieve, whatever you think that might be this impossible pipe dream, there's someone out there who has less mental assets than you, less opportunity, and they've done it. They've already achieved it, or the equivalent of it. So for you to doubt yourself and say that you can't do what you want to do and what you're trying to do is absurd, because someone else out there has already done it. So defeat the self-doubt, recognize that if you persist, you will succeed. Understand that other people who've had less to play with than you have already done it, and then go out there and do it.
Awesome. Thank you. That another awesome answer. Tom, where can we connect with you? If somebody wanted to say, Tom, thanks for being on the Empowered Podcast, where could they go and do that?
Well, if you go to Leaving Work Behind, there's a whole bunch of ways you can get in touch with me through the forums, through email. I always reply. If you get in touch with me on Twitter, Facebook, email, it doesn't matter. I'll always reply. So if anyone wants to do that, and just let them know, let me know where they've come from. I'll be all too happy to chat with them and help them if I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure. Thank you.
Guys, I want to reiterate something Tom said right there at the end. He said persistence. And there is someone out there who has less skill, less ability, less talent, whatever it is that's holding you back from doing what you want to do the way that you want to do it. There's someone out there with less ability than you who has already done or is already doing, in the process of doing what you want to do. And if you say you can't do it, you're just being absurd. Now, he says it a little bit better than I did, but it's so freaking true. All of this self-doubt that we have, there are people out there with less skill and less ability than us who are already doing it. And really, so many times, it's just us, the man in the mirror, who's saying, yeah, you can't do it. And if we can just get over that and get through that, we can really change our lives and do something worth doing. And then lastly, he says, recognize that if you persist, you will succeed. And I would just want to encourage you to do that today. Persist. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to achieve, persist. Do something on a day-to-day basis. Do something right now. When you end this episode, do something right now that will help you get one step closer to your goal. If you will, thank Tom for being on the show. Head over to his website, leavingworkbehind.com, and just tell him that you found him on the Empowered Podcast. It would mean a lot to both of us. And here is some words of wisdom coming up from our next episode of the Empowered Podcast. We'll talk to you next week.
Just stick with it. Just keep on going. Don't let those little voices in your head, the same little voices that said that, you weren't cute enough to, ask that person out in high school and, or, to ask her to the dance or whatever. That's the same silly little voices in your head that still seem to perk up. Just try not to listen to them so much.